this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something Else.
Something Else, Daddy.
This is Nikolai Volkoff, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to our annual Arya Has a Cold edition of Something Else. This is episode number 148. And we're talking about Mid-South, we're talking about world class, and unlike prior years where I had a cold during these episodes, I have a co-host who's going to carry it for me. So welcome, as always, the Thermaflu to my Sudafed. It's Trae. Trae, how the hell are you today?
Okay, my wife says the same thing, and I correct her every time just because I'm an asshole. It's Theraflu,
No,
therapy
Thermaflu.
flu. It's not Thermaflu, it's Theraflu.
I will
Good stuff,
take
though.
I will take your word for that. That's what I wrote it down as Robitussin, and I forgot because I covered the Robitussin part of my notes, and so I couldn't remember what I wrote. So Sudafed came to my mind, and so that's what I said.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of the Theraflu. That's usually my go-to if I have a cold or like even just like a sore throat. I don't get colds really often though. I have a lot of allergy stuff. That's been so like I never sneezed once. I sneezed like 7 to 13 times in a row and scare my cats.
So um, Trey's gonna handle a lot of the heavy lifting on this week's show. Now I say that knowing I'm probably gonna say about 50,000 words myself. So you know, who's to say who's does the light lifting here? But just to tell you how the story of this little cold is gone, Wednesday night, actually most of Wednesday, I was already feeling it and I was having to yell just to be heard normally. Like I was losing my voice. And then Thursday, got even worse. I worked for like an hour on Thursday, and I had to call it quits just because I'm like my job is to talk to people all day long, and this is not good. And sure enough, later that afternoon, I lost my voice entirely. And it eventually came. It was fluctuating a bit. It was in and out on Friday. I took off on Friday as well. This morning, I sound like this, which, while isn't quite me, is still an improvement on how I was. But with the return of my voice, also came all the coughing that comes with a cold and the blowing of the nose. And I blew my nose so hard that I had a nosebleed this morning, which was fun. But thankfully, my nose is clotted and I have a mute button, and so hopefully I don't cough into everyone's ears.
Yeah, there was actually consideration that I might have to step in and do the TNA review, which luckily you've been saved from that train wreck for another day, listener, because that would have been something.
We'll hold off until Cindy or I are really sick. But speaking of the schedule, you want to tell the fine people what our holidays are looking like?
Okay, what the holidays are looking like. So next week will be the last TNA and SMW shows for 2 weeks. On Christmas Eve, we will have a podcast reviewing the December 24th World Class show and the December 24th and 31st Mid South shows. At some point, we're going to drop a bonus show, apparently, and we will likely do Wrestle Kingdom. I don't know if I will be able to do that on January 4th, but we will see. because that's let's see. I will have the show that Wrestle Kingdom runs from like midnight to just about 6 a.m. and then I will have to take a nap and go do it. Oh, excuse me, my throat almost went out. I have something to do that day, and then I have to come back, and it's going to be a live collision, and then Wrestle Dynasty right after. Which apparently Wrestle Dynasty starts like an hour after Collision ends, so that's handy. But anywho, we'll figure that out when we get there.
So
January 7th, we do not have a Mid South show, so that week we will do the Christmas Star Wars show, which is aired on the on December 31st, January 7th, and half of the January 14th World Class TV. And then that week we'll also be back with TNA and Smoky Mountain, and then after that it will be business as usual.
job there. I was actually thinking, and I mean, I guess I should have ran this by you. Is since at the very least I'm rewatching Wrestle Kingdom, and I'm probably gonna squeeze in Wrestle Dynasty too. We could always just do one show recapping both, if you like.
Yeah, that's probably the best idea.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, that's the schedule coming up. Um. And yeah. But let's just say our text conversations may be better than our verbal conversations this week. Um, but so let's. Did you want to talk about anything before we dive into Mid South?
No, I guess not. Would it be easier if I kind of called the match here?
Uh, sure. I didn't send you my timestamps, but sure, we can do that. Let's play the intro, then we'll come back and we'll talk about that. And while that's going on, I'm gonna message Trey the timestamps.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, and we have a lot of exciting action. To tell you about it, our expert commentator and president of Mid-South Wrestling, Bill Watts.
Well, thank you, Boyd. I think there's a tremendous amount of action Grizzly Smith's got for us tonight. The one thing I want to comment on is last week, it seemed like Krusher Darsow's obsession with powerlifting and wrestling, with just power, has become a narcotic to him. And he's been entrapped by the Russian, just the way Russia does so many countries, by leading them down that path until they have total dominance of them. Last week, when Dr. Death Steve Williams was wrestling Nikolai Volkoff, Darsow interfered. Let's watch that. And he's firing away that.
All right. So they went faster than I can type. Um, so I mentioned this when we were talking earlier. This episode of Mid South is definitely a whole lot different than Mid South had been under Ernie Ladd. If you were not a smart fan, and I mean honestly, how many people really were smart fans in 1983? It's easy to see that something changed in the company just watching the TV show because this show is so much different than uh what it has been.
There was more focus on storylines, I guess. Like this has been a lot of for like the 6 months that I've been doing this. It's been a lot of match, and usually like not very substantial matches with an angle every few weeks. This was it wasn't well, this was angle heavy for this show. And there was a lot of VTRs, a lot of interviews kind of driving home what are going to be the important stories going forward.
Indeed. And so we go to they show the replay of Darsow's promo and of him turning heel last week when he helped Volkoff beat Dr. Williams. And then Krusher Darsow came out with a buzzed head and shaved his face and has some red tights, and he went one-on-one with Mike Jackson, Trey.
Do you remember like 3 months ago when I made a joke about Darsow becoming a communist because it was the most economical way to get proper wrestling gear?
I do.
Prophecy fulfilled.
You're a genius, Trey.
They did nothing. It was a little over 2 minutes, and Darsow won, still with the Canadian backbreaker.
I would say, do you think we should rename it the Russian backbreaker? But then what would you call Volkov's finisher?
Is that the Russian backbreaker? I guess it can
I,
be.
I mean, we don't really have a name for it. I've just been calling it the world's strongest backbreaker.
They've just been calling it a press backbreaker just because it's like a press slam into a backbreaker.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's how many? I guess there's only two like national variations of the backbreaker. You got the Canadian breaker and the Argentine backbreaker. It's better known as the torture rack.
Yes. So who knows what that I guess is all about, you know? Maybe some other countries need to come out with their own version of the backbreaker.
I really
Um,
like. I don't know what it's called. I honestly like. I'm not a lucha guy, and part of me feels like I really need to study lucha just to learn what all this shit is called. But there's that really cool lucha spinning backbreaker thing that like you'd see Jericho do it anytime he wrestled Rey Mysterio. You know the thing I'm talking about? That's like the
mhm.
spinny leg hold thing into almost like a reverse torture rack. Maybe that could be the Mexican backbreaker.
There we go. I noted that, Mike Jackson, he gets all the credit for being the great worker and a very believable jobber. He literally jumped up into the air while running off the ropes to jump into Darsow's bear hug, which,
It's still like other than like Bobby Eaton did his Condry, Mike Jackson is the best wrestler on the show.
indeed, and it's funny because, when you hear some people like a lot of people are better than we give them credit for, but
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Um, so since Trey hasn't looked at the Facebook post I sent him, I'm going to
Oh,
pitch it here to the video after the match of Nikolai Volkoff has gotten in the ring with Darsow and JR, and Volkoff has a present for him.
I want here show him my good American comrade here, and I have a present for him right here, brother, because you deserve it. You show yourself. I have here a present for you. Yeah. Look at there.
The Russian flag. Nikolai Volkov has just presented Krusher Darsow with a Russian flag, to which he's accepted. It's hard to tell what the world's coming to, wrestling fans, and we'll be back with more wrestling on the Mid-South Television Network.
I think JR was personally hurt by this one.
it
He,
seemed like it, man. He was I don't JR must have had a bad week because he like when he voiced over that the Macho Man video package, he sounded fucking dejected. I don't know.
I think that's what happens when Mr. Wrestling 2 pays you to go to Kentucky to film video of Macho Man Randy Savage.
I'd be sad if I had to go to Kentucky. Unless we were going to Barberville to watch Bullet Bob and Cornette in the cage.
Very true. And we could to go back in time to 1993. It's nice that we're using our time travel technology to go to wrestling shows.
I mean, what else would you use time travel for? We'll
Uh,
fuck up if we try to like stop 9/11 or kill Hitler. We'll just fuck up the whole flow of time and make shit worse. If we go to some wrestling shows, we're probably not going to change history too much.
Honestly, we'd probably somehow make Hitler and 9/11 even worse than they were.
By going to watch Ron White and Roddy Caldwell and uh, Johnson City in 1970 or whatever, somehow
Exactly.
that just has a
If
so
you say if you step on a ladybug in, the past, it can drastically alter the future.
so do we think that Darso turning was a Dundee move, or was that already in motion?
I think Dundee quickened it. I think it was eventually going to happen because every one of Junkyard Dog's friends turned on him, so he was going to turn on Dog eventually. Just I think it would have taken a little bit longer to get there. I did note that this was a brand new flag. I don't know where you buy a Russian flag in 1983, but it had all of the creases that you get from when you buy a folded up flag and you unfold it for the first time.
Well, this was a new taping. They might have had the idea 2 weeks ago and managed to order it from somewhere. Surely, I don't know. I'm just imagining, like, where in Shreveport in 1983 would you get a Soviet flag?
That's what I'm
Uh,
asking.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Volkov called somebody new in New York or something. I no idea.
Maybe the increase in promo time and video time on this show was like that was definitely the Dundee because this felt a lot more like it was paced like a Memphis TV show.
Mhm. In reality, like, if this was still Ernie Ladd, we would have had at least two more matches on this show.
Yeah,
Uh,
there was a lot of story centric stuff on this show, which is good because the show's been kind of boring. This was a lot more interesting. It finally
I,
feels like stuff is going somewhere.
I told you we had just had to stick around till the end of the year. Uh,
Yeah.
Tag team champions Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart versus Randy Barber and Coco fucking Ware.
Now I assume that Coco drove Lawler to Shreveport and got booked as a favor.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Um, by the way, I started wondering when the fuck was the last time Reed and Neidhart were even on this show? And then I looked, it turned out it was like 3 weeks ago, which admittedly isn't that long ago, but still, that was still when Ernie Ladd was the booker.
Yeah, they
Um,
just weren't on the last set of tapings at all, were they?
no, they
I
weren't,
remember.
and it's especially weird because and I know it's a different booker, so you just kind of got to ignore what happened. But for fuck's sake, like the last major angle we saw on this show was Butch Reed painting. I forget what the jobber's name was. He painted him yellow because that's what he's gonna do to Junkyard Dog.
I also can't remember the jobber's name.
Obviously he's a big
Was it
star.
Cobra King or King
King
Cobra?
Cobra, maybe
Yeah,
sounds right.
it might have been King Cobra. And
Um,
and like on this show, fucking dogs in another program,
yep.
they are clearly leading to Neidhart and Reed being in at least a brief program. So is that just are we just not doing that anymore? Or,
Apparently not. Um,
okay,
by the way, Coco Ware is spelled with C's instead of K's, and there were no quotations. So in the Mid-South world, his real name is Coco Ware.
it's what like obviously I knew him first as Coco Beware. And then, like, when I would read about older stuff and just see him referred to as Coco Ware, I'm like, what is that? Like, I actually thought, like, I would look at old observers, and I actually thought that was just Dave being Dave and refusing to use the WWF name. But no, he was Coco Ware until he went to the WWF and became Coco Beware.
Yeah,
And that's such a Vince McMahon thing. Like, I should have known.
I was the same thing, mostly because I was like, well, this is Dave who, when if you read those old WWF reports, he calls Ultimate Warrior Anabolic Warrior and shit like that. So it's like, Dave was always one to give his little cute pet names and, not using their actual WWF names when he could. Um,
Yeah, and that's.
mhm.
I'm not gonna say he regrets that. He realizes now that people take it way more seriously today, so you can't do that anymore.
I always laugh like when you read the 85 Observers, especially, he was so pissed that Vince was taking over the wrestling business. And I mean, I'm sure like he was hearing it from Watts and he's hearing it from different promoters and whatnot. But like, man, Dave was taking that shit personally.
I'm still mad about it, and I wasn't even born in 1985.
By the way, Neidhart pinned Barber with the Samoan drop. Coco tried way too hard to break up the finish, and basically everyone had to ignore him.
Okay, and I have two notes. Number one is that Randy Barber's skin tone tights were not a good look.
Nope.
Now, Coco making the save. He tried to make a save, but then he didn't actually disrupt the pin, so the referee just counted three anyway. And I kind of prefer that to the way they do it now, where if you touch the guy, it breaks the pin.
hmm
And
hmm
then we got, let's see, is it on the timestamp here?
hmm
Well, we went back to Boyd and Bill, and then we went to a VTR with Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA because apparently, according to Watch, having a coach in pro wrestling is just a revolutionary concept.
Yes. So let's go to that now.
A revolutionary new concept here on Mid-South Wrestling. Magnum TA hired one of the living legends, one of the best wrestlers in the business, Mr. Wrestling 2, as his coach. And 2 reports that everything's going fantastic in the gymnasium, but 2 wants his total attention. And he says, Magnum, you've got to study it from every aspect. You've got to study opponents. You've got to study the psychology of every wrestler. You've got to know your opponents and your teammates. Let's watch Wrestling 2 as he seems to be really beating a point to death.
You know, you're doing super good in your workouts. I'm very proud of you. But there's certain things that you still cannot get in your mind. You know, I told you there's things you have to learn about the human body, the human person, mankind, you might say. I warned you about Lanny Poffo, didn't I? I told you about him. His whole family is rotten. And I'm telling you where it comes from now. As a matter of fact, I have a little clipping here I just want to show you. I sent Jim down to Kentucky to get some clippings on this man, and I got it, and I want you to just see him.
Freaked out! Freaked out! Macho Man Randy Savage, 235 pounds, Sarasota, Florida, ICW World Heavyweight Champion, and one of the world's greatest athletes. Yeah, dig it? Yeah, dig it?
From our initial investigation, all indications are that Randy Savage, brother of Leaping Lanny Poffo, holds nothing but contempt and hatred for his fellow wrestlers. Randy Savage cares not for awards, but would rather carry on the sadistic wrestling style of the Poffo family. I'm Jim Ross, reporting from Lexington, Kentucky for Mid-South Wrestling.
Well, now you've seen it. What do you think?
Well, too, I know you have nothing but my best interest at heart, or you wouldn't have spent so much time with me. I know you went through a lot of effort to show me this clipping, but, you know, you've got to remember even Cain and Abel were from the same family. But, you know, things change, you know, brothers change. They go separate ways, and Lanny showed me nothing but good.
And blood's thicker than water. I'm telling you the man is rotten. I want you to stay away from him. That's just an example. I'll get to him. I'm going to find something on him yet.
Well, Wrestling 2, like I say, he spits it out and he believes it, and he's researching it, and he's a dogmatic, very thorough man. And he feels that Lanny Poffo is just like the rest of his family, and certainly Angelo Poffo, the father, and Randy Savage, Macho Man, are evil people. But Lanny Poffo has not shown any of those tendencies here on Mid-South. He's seemingly been a straightforward, honest young man. Let's go to Jim Ross in the ring for the next match.
So Randy Savage is a dickhead, and Lanny Poffo is his brother.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Are you your brother? Like, do you have the same character as your sibling?
I do
I
not.
don't at all.
My brother just shot Bambi today, so uh yeah, him and I are definitely two different people.
I don't have a moral aversion to hunting. It's just that it's really early in the morning. It's really cold outside, and I don't want anything to do with that.
I I tend to try to not think about it, but it's like to me, I'm like, okay, you're like, you know, I don't want to say it's not difficult to shoot a deer, but it's like you're the one with a gun, you're the one with camouflage. You're sitting here with like, deer calls or whatever you're using to lure the deer out and, you know, and then you're blasting a hole in its side. Like, I don't know. It's not much of a fair fight, if you ask me.
Here's my thing. I think that like trophy hunting is really scummy, but if you're eating what you kill, that's just what humans have done for millions of years.
And to be fair, he is. I'm just,
Yeah. Now
that's
the
just
other
me.
thing, the reason that I don't deer hunt is I just plain don't like venison, so why would I do something that I don't want to do for something I don't even like?
Hmm.
I have breaking news here as we record this here show on Saturday night. Pentagon Jr. has returned to AAA.
Interesting. Now, is it just a one-off, or is it coming out that he is signing there?
Uh, no word about him signing or anything. It's just that he's there in support of Latin Lover, who if I remember right, is like the babyface authority figure, as opposed to Conan, who's the heel authority figure.
I thought you were going to say the breaking news is that Obafemi and Julia won the Iron Survivor matches on NXT today,
Oh yeah, I was watching Collision.
as was I. Um, by the way, like, I don't know about you, but the way TA was standing there with his arm dropped, at first I thought he was leaning on a cane, but but it was the cane was like slightly off camera. But then he was moving his arm around just fine, so maybe it's just a weird way that he was standing.
I still don't understand why Two is being such a dickhead.
Did two ever feud with Macho Man or Angelo? I think we tried looking it up once. There
I
wasn't anything we could find.
Yeah, not that we could find. I don't like. He was always, booked in an NWA territory. I don't know if he ever would have worked for the Poffos Outlaw promotion or anything, and we couldn't find anything when we looked. So I don't know. But I'm going to say something spoilery. So if you don't want the next couple of months spoiled for you, skip ahead like 20 seconds.
La di da
Uh,
di la di da.
it's like really obvious. Like they're already setting up to turning on TA, and they haven't even won the tag belts yet.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean that seems pretty obvious. Um, and I laugh. It's like you know, like you're telling your child you can't do this, and it's like, well, that's just gonna make your child do what you're telling them not to do anyway.
Yeah, that's
The thing is, I don't think Lanny stays in those territory long anyway. I could be wrong, but I think he's gone fairly quickly. I'd have to look
well,
that
at
up.
least they got something out of him here. And speaking of Lanny Poffo, we got Jeff Sword versus Lanny Poffo. Lanny continues to wrestle just as clean as can be and do lots of pleasingly athletic moves. They went 2.5 minutes, and then Lanny won with a standing moonsault. So maybe somebody finally talked to him.
I noted he did a standing senton and then a standing moonsault.
Yeah, he
Which,
was he was doing some nifty stuff in 1983. Lanny's like he's such a punchline
Mhm.
because who his brother was, and his brother's like an all-time great. And then also, to Savage's credit, Savage was very loyal to his family. He always made sure that like his brother and his father were taken care of. But then because of that, you had the punchline of like Lanny being under contract for WCW for years and never being used. But
Mhm.
like even going into like the Genius stuff, like Lanny was really good.
By the way, Lanny's actually here until May.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying having him around.
yeah, he's definitely a nice addition to the program.
I think on some of like the upcoming like house shows, he's gonna be like I can't remember who he's teaming with, but it's like Lanny and somebody, and maybe Lanny and Rude against Midnight Express, and I bet those are good matches.
Yeah, Lanny and Rude. They form a new exciting tag team coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
Spoiler
Watts
alert.
said that later in the show that they were gonna team next week.
Just wait for the following week. Um,
Oh,
uh,
and then we
well,
got So are you ready to move on to the next time cue?
I was, yes.
And then we got another Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA VTR.
Let's go to that now.
Stung, your lights went out more or less, and now you're in trouble. Hey, you've got to watch those things and try to learn to be able to recuperate in a faster fashion. Your bell got rung there, and he is absolutely just wiping the floor up with you. Which, hey, what's this? You got to remember one thing, my boy. You're wrestling the champion. He didn't become champion by being Mr. Nice Guy. He became champion by catching people off guard, and that's exactly what he did to you. He caught you off guard and rung your bell. True, at this particular point now you're coming in strong. You got him reeling and rocking, and boy, you really got things going your way. Look at you. Now, why did you turn your back there? Hesitation. That's no good. You can't have hesitation. You got him down. You can't get overconfident at any time. You're taking your time at this particular point. You're coming in. Look, watch this. What happened? Hey, come on. You got to get together on these things, man. Don't get your mind off somewhere else. Don't ever think you have things under control, because you don't. Not until your hand gets raised. Then you got things under control. I hope this is a match you will not forget. Understand that? Yes. Yeah, I hope so. My trend here is not just to be to capture and make a wrestler, you primarily, a good wrestler. I want to make you the best, the finest pro wrestling has ever seen in the history of wrestling, and I've got to have your complete cooperation. Understood?
Needless to say, we'll be closely following the progress of Magnum TA under the tutelage of a legend, Wrestling 2. Let's go to the ring announcer, Jim Ross, now for this next bout.
All right, so not the most exciting video we've ever seen, but hey, we're led to believe that this guy's TA's coach, and here are them outside the ring. He's coaching them. They're watching video. Sure, they're watching it at the Mid-South editing studio instead of, just putting out a tape in the VCR or something. But,
It's 1983. Mr. Wrestling 2 doesn't own a VCR.
that is very true. That is very true. Maybe a Betamax.
I was that version of the media war was already over by the time I was kind of, at least old enough to know. Everybody says Beta had like a better picture, so it's a shame that. But the way it always works, whatever format that porn goes with is the one that wins the format war.
Hence why Blu-ray defeated HD DVD. Um, I never had a Beta, but I did have an 8-track growing up, like when I was wee. Um, so yeah, I liked that. I don't know about you, but I liked it. I thought it was a
Yeah.
cute little segment.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It was neat to actually see what 2 is doing for TA. Like, we're
hmm
not just getting a vague, well, at least coaching him. Like, you actually got a tangible, him going over tape and critiquing him and giving him advice. So that was cool.
Did you ever see the picture of Jimmy Carter putting Mr. Wrestling 2 in a headlock?
I can't remember. Just I've heard of it, and I'm sure I've seen it at some point.
Yeah.
I do know the story that Carter's mother wanted invited to the inauguration, but he wouldn't take his mask off, so the Secret Service wouldn't let him come with the mask on.
Uh, he held up kayfabe instead of spending a night in the White House.
Man. Now I'm just imagining 2 in the mask sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom.
Oh Lord, is that better or worse than imagining Donald Trump being naked right now?
Nothing is worse than imagining Donald Trump being naked.
So Magnum TA versus Tom Lentz, who not only played a little football, but is back.
Yeah, he's back, and he's just another one of the job guys.
I didn't write down if it was this week or next week. A spoiler, I watched next week's show already. But they introduce him, and he looks so surprised, like he got introduced. Like, holy shit, that was me.
Why did they act like he was anything before he just started doing jobs?
I don't know. Like it was so random because like we said a few weeks ago, it's not even like he had a quick win over Randy Barber or something just to establish that he was at least a step above that. He just came in, cut a random promo one week for no reason. We stalked him, we doxed the wrong person, and now he's doing jobs.
The most interesting part of this match was Watts talking about his friend Jerry Clower from Yazoo, Mississippi again. And TA won in 3 minutes with the Bloody Belly suplex. It was
The CMA
fine.
Country Music Comedian of the Year.
Yeah, okay, that's who that is.
Yes. But yeah, TA wins with his belly to belly. And so that coaching from two must have really paid off because, TA
Yeah,
wasn't beating jobbers before two got involved.
it's not like he was the champion before they started this thing.
I mean, technically he wasn't. Actually, he was tag
Well,
team. What was he tag team champion with Duggan?
or
Yeah.
was it Dog? Was he tag team champions with Duggan or Dog?
Anyway, he was tag team champion at some point. So there is that. But yeah.
And believe it or not, we got a second in-ring segment with Jim Ross and Krusher Darsow.
Well, I think everybody's concerned with the commitment that Krusher Darsow has made, and Jim Ross is in the ring to confront him and ask him if he realizes the consequences of his act. Let's go to Jim Ross.
I think that because of what transpired earlier today, there's some questions that need to be answered. The questions I want to ask you. I want you to listen to me very intently. Do you understand exactly what transpired today with that flag? You understand that you not only turn your back on the fans, your friends that you've made in this Mid-South area, people that you've talked with many, many times, like myself, your family, but you've also turned your back on the most important thing that we have going for us. That's living in a free country, living in America. You've turned your back on our country. I just want to know if you're sure, if you understand exactly what you're doing.
Jim, what has my country done for me anyways? They haven't done a darn thing. I've been starving, just like when I came down here, the Junkyard Dog didn't do anything for me. I come down here and I help him out, help him in the ring and everything. He didn't even say thank you. He didn't do one thing for me.
You're telling me the Junkyard Dog did not help you work out? The Junkyard Dog didn't show you wrestling maneuvers? The Junkyard Dog didn't try to bring you up the ladder?
The Junkyard Dog didn't do anything for me. He just treated me like a piece of nothing. And I tried everything I do to get along with him, and he didn't do one thing. I'm sick and tired of hearing the name Junkyard Dog. Because Nikolai Volkoff is the only person that has helped me. And he's a friend of mine, and he's trained me, and he's teaching me the two things I do best, and that's wrestling and powerlifting.
Well, you're saying the Junkyard Dog has never done anything for you. He's looking at you right eyeball to eyeball. Now you tell him what you think.
Dog, you didn't do one thing for me since I've been down here. I even threw $500 away. And what'd you do? You didn't even say thank you. You didn't get me in any main events.
Main event?
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. I started from the bottom. I built myself up. That's what I was trying to get you to do. Start from the bottom and build yourself up and make something out of yourself. But no, you go and turn your back with somebody like Volkoff, man.
Well, look at that.
Sometimes you need waking up. My dad used to wake up.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait, whoa.
Junkyard Dog just slapped Darsow. Darsow didn't do anything about it. Maybe he's realizing. Looks like he's at a real point of indecision. The Dog has just gone ghetto style. He's showing Nikolai Volkoff how they do it in the back alley in the street. Volkoff is so powerful. Now Darsow looks like he's going to go to the aid of the Dog.
He moved in, but now he backed away, Bill.
Now the Dog's on top. Darsow's attacked the dog. He's broken and torn it. He's ripped it now. He's thrown it all away. The man he's befriended, now he's holding him. And the Russians attacking the junkyard dog. The Russians attacking the junkyard dog. Dog is down. Both of them are putting the boots to the dog. The Russian and Darsow's. Darsow's a red. He's a comrade. A Darsow, a Russian lackey, a bootlicker. Here's Mike Jackson coming in and Barber. They haven't got the firepower for that. Darsow and them throwing them out. The Russian holding the dog. Darsow dropping elbows on him. Here comes Hacksaw Duggan and Volkoff and Hacksaw Magnum TA. And the Russians are retreating.
Okay, what I think is really interesting here, we'll see if you notice the same thing. It's like they are teasing that Darsow's in over his head. Like he's not necessarily really turning heel. It's that, he's being manipulated by a more experienced wrestler and that he is going to have a redemption arc. And he doesn't ever, but I had that feeling like they were setting this up as a long-term redemption story for him as this guy that, basically what Sergeant Slaughter did, just, less extreme.
Are you implying that Hole in One Barry Darsow wasn't a redemption arc?
Well, I mean, indeed it was, because he did eventually, because did he ever make the putt? Remember we used to have the little putting green on WCW Saturday night? I don't remember him ever actually making the putt.
I don't know. Yeah, well, no red-blooded American would choose to become a communist, Arya. Come on.
Well, to be fair, he's never a communist. He's a communist sympathizer.
I mean, no, he's a Soviet sympathizer. You could be an American and be a communist.
That's true. That's true. Whatchamacallit, Sheldon Cooper was a communist.
Really?
Yes, on young Sheldon, they had an
okay, I
episode.
remember. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm not to put too fine a point on it, but as far as my politics, you could say that I put the red in redneck, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't know. I picture you being like, when you're being a redneck, you're like the over-the-top stereotype, or to the point where it's funny, like almost to the extent that you're a Caucasian Jimmy Wang Yang. Like, you're so redneck, like you're not. No.
It's funny because you wouldn't really peg me as a redneck until you really you'd have to really hear me talk about, the way I grew up and stuff. You'd have to when I was in grad school, it was so awkward because I was the one guy from fucking backwoods southern small town that every now and then I would just say something really southern and then everybody would just stop and look at me. But yeah, if you really want to hear the redneck come out, let me get drunk and it'll be when my mom was alive. If you heard me talk to my mom on the phone, you'd be like, okay, that's fucking redneck.
Maybe we need to do an F4W Christmas show and just get you nice and drunk one week.
Yeah, that's I don't see how anything could go wrong with that.
Nah, not at all. All right. So in case that wasn't enough, let's go to geopolitical Bill Watts pitching it to a video of Dr. Death Steve Williams.
Well, you just saw that, Boyd Pierce. That's no different than Russian ideology the world over, to divide, to conquer, and then once you've got control of them, to use them to do your dirty work. We better unite in this country and put away our petty beefs with each other and unite against a common cause. Exactly. And here's a man that'll unite, a man that's outspoken about how he loves the United States and how he hates Russia. Let's go as this Mid-South cameras visited Dr. Death Steve Williams as he attends Oklahoma University.
Owen Field in Norman, Oklahoma, the home of the University of Oklahoma Sooners. And for the past 5 years, the collegiate home of Steve Dr. Death Williams. Here we see Steve and Joel Armstrong Watts as they carry on the normal life of college students. During the week, they attend classes at Oklahoma University in pursuit of college degrees. And when Steve's busy schedule permits, Dr. Death returns to the violent world of professional wrestling, as seen here with Big Bobby Dunkel. After graduation, Steve will have to choose between a career in recreational management, professional football, or professional wrestling. And the fans in the Mid-South area certainly hope that Dr. Death chooses the squared circle.
When the fans are behind me, no one can stop me.
Steve's fellow students at Oklahoma University, including this former collegiate wrestling teammate, are extremely supportive of his dual career as a student and a professional athlete. And from the very beginning of his career at the University of Oklahoma, Dr. Death realized that conditioning was an important aspect of his athletic success, as is evidenced here by his 300-pound-plus bench press. Whichever career Steve chooses, his opponents can be assured that he will be physically prepared. And there is one adversary in particular that Steve Williams is anxious to meet. That's the giant Russian, Nikolai Volkoff.
The opponent I would most like to face is that Russian, Volkoff. He's been saying some pretty bad things about the USA. And nothing gets me madder than that, because I am American. All American.
Here the four-time All-American collides with King Kong Bundy. Dr. Death possesses tremendous upper body strength, but he also realizes that, especially in professional wrestling, the development of the lower body is as equally important. After a brief stint with the New Jersey Generals of the United States Football League, this former OU football star realizes he indeed faces a tough decision between pro football and professional wrestling. While Steve has not yet reached that decision, he continues to work out daily. And when the time comes, Dr. Death will be ready.
Favorite wrestling move is the Oklahoma Stampede. It's by the far my favorite move. It was taught by me by the great cowboy Bill Watts. I only hope that I can have as much success with it as he did.
From the University of Oklahoma Wrestling Room in Norman, Oklahoma with Steve Dr. Death Williams, I'm Jim Ross for Mid-South Wrestling.
JR was so much happier talking about Dr. Death than he was talking about Macho Man Randy Savage.
Speaking of drunk, like, do they get Doc straight out of a frat party for that?
It's very possible. Um, I noted that this was the first time that they ever uh, flat out said that Joel Armstrong was Joel Watts. I mean, we cracked the code, at his first appearance on the show, but this is the first time that it was acknowledged who he really was.
Hey, not like I just thought that they said it was Joel Watts.
No, they said it was when he was referee, he was Joel Armstrong.
I know. I don't know. I guess I wasn't thinking about you looking and telling it was the same person.
But by the way, what I thought was I had to laugh. Like, this is the South. This is 1983, but we still have to show what a nice guy Dr. Death is by having him talk to the one black guy who walked by when he was walking around.
That's so true. Oh my god. Oh.
And that's like, not only that, the black guy walked by with a woman, and the woman walked by and stopped with her back to them the whole time. Like, oh boy, she wanted none of that.
It's really funny how you barely know the South and yet you recognize that trope.
I guess this proves he's a good guy and will team up with Junkyard Dog with no problem, I guess.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, well, who's Dog's partner going to be against these communists? And then I realized, well, maybe it's going to be Doc and Dog.
Yep. I like that Doc wants to wrestle Volkoff as if he didn't just wrestle him last week.
Nobody remembers that. I didn't remember that.
I like he didn't remember that. They literally referenced it at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, a lot has happened since then.
So remember the last time Iceman Parsons was on this show? They put both Iceman and King in quotations. Well,
Yeah,
Iceman Parsons is back this week, and King is not in quotations, meaning now his real name is King Parsons, which means we have
told you.
three
That's what
Kings on this show.
Three Kings, Cobra King, King Parsons, and John King. Yeah. Oh, and also King Carl Fergie and King Jerry Lawler.
Yes, we have five. I wasn't even thinking about. I'm thinking of calling him Cobra King. Uh, King Cobra and the debuting John King. Spoiler alert. So we need to have like a five-man battle royal for the King name.
John King has been on here before.
John King?
I thought, yeah.
I'll take your word for it. I don't remember him.
Yeah,
Um,
he lost to Lanny Poffo.
oh,
And
okay.
and he drew Tony Torres in the expiration
Well,
of time match.
I mean, everybody draws Tony Torres in the expiration of time match. Tony Torres has a career record of 0 wins, 0 losses, and 800 ties. Um, so Iceman Parsons defeats Doug Vines with the She Calls That the Rear View, and geopolitical Bill Watts got to complain about Russia's politics some more.
Yeah, that's what this match was. By the way, I will never call it the Romper Stomper. It is the Butt Butt.
Yes, we may disagree over whether to call it the butt or the She Calls That the Rear View, but it will never be the Rumper Stomper.
Exactly.
All right, so now we got to put over your Twitter follower, or I guess she also follows me, because you went on Twitter this evening and talked about George Weingroff's humongous penis, and because there's a reason for that. Um, so on this week's show, let's go. It's nearly the end of the show. We have like 1 minute of airtime left, but there's always time for some Midnight Express. Let's go to Jim
Always.
Cornette to introduce his team.
Good enough. Now we'll get the class in here, Jim Ross, if you don't mind backing up. I think it would also be a good idea if the people in the studio remain silent, give me the respect I deserve. Now I want to make a little challenge today. I want to challenge every man, every woman, and every child in the Mid-South area. Watch what you're about to see here in this ring, and if you could come up with the honesty in your bodies to say that the two men you're about to see are the greatest, the fastest, the strongest, indeed the best tag team that you've ever seen in a professional wrestling ring, then you tell me that. If you have any honesty, integrity, or intestinal fortitude, you won't be able to say anything else but, when you see Loverboy Dennis and beautiful Bobby, the Midnight Express.
All right. Like I always say, I don't know how much longer we're gonna do that every week, but I guess as long as Corny is still entertaining me.
I we should probably just do it forever because I can't imagine it not being good. He's only going to get better. He's only been doing this for like 3 weeks.
Uh-huh. It's only gonna improve from here. So he's
So
taking on George Weingroff's penis and John King. In fact, Cornette's not taking them on. Midnight Express is taking them on. And you want to explain the joke about George Weingroff's penis in this match?
speaking of taking on George Weingroff, now there is a rumor. This is a rumor that
Hmm.
one Mr. James E. Cornette has a cuckold fetish. Now, we do not kink shame on this podcast.
We do not.
I'm just saying, can you imagine the joy that Corny would take if he could watch his wife get railed by George Weingroff?
Especially if he has the giant penis that we always assume he does.
I, why would he not? Of course he does. We didn't just make this up. We did make this up, but It's canon. It's become something else canon.
And it's been going on for like, I don't know, because Minecraft's been here for like 4 or 5 months at this point.
And it was like the
I,
second time he showed up. I don't even remember where this came from. I
think
think I made some dumb offhand joke and then it just became a thing.
I think it was because he was on and Watts and Boyd were treating this jobber like the second coming of Christ. And it
Yeah.
was like, he's coming on, he never wins, and they're talking about him like he's the next world champion. Like there's gotta be something with him. And one of us brought up he must have a giant penis, and here we are.
He was coming on and now he's coming on Jim Cornette's wife.
Oh Lord.
That may be the worst.
So
Now,
midnight.
the thing I said about Whitey Caldwell the other day was probably the worst.
Mm-hmm. Listen to Smoky Mountain if you want to know what the hell we're talking about. By the way, when JR introduced Weingroff and King, Corny sidestepped into the camera view to straighten his tie and you know, basically, mug for the camera.
Yeah.
Midnight Express have matching robes this week, although they haven't yet discovered color coordinated gear.
Uh,
Um,
you know, I don't think Bobby and Dennis ever really did the coordinated gear, did they? I
I
don't think
kind
they
of
did very much.
assumed they did.
Like Bobby and Stan always had matching gear, but I may be wrong, and they may have it some, but I feel like even, up to like 86, 87, Bobby and Dennis never really did coordinated gear.
I don't know. I always assumed they did. Maybe I'm just like seeing things in my head that I want to see. So I guess we'll see. We'll find out. I don't know where the hell they got these robes from because I doubt they ever wear them again.
By the way, this is the one time that I wish Stan Lane was here because I was gonna make a joke that between George Weingroff and Dennis Condrey, there's about a mile and a half of dick in this match. But I think, given what we know about Stan Lane, he would probably work for that joke better.
Austin Aries is 5 foot a dick.
Yeah, vertical, not horizontal.
Midnight Express won in seconds in case you thought they were going to go do the expiration of time match. They did not. They won, hitting their back suplex elbow from the middle rope on John King.
Then, do you remember last week that they promised us Jerry Lawler would be here this week?
Yes, I
Well,
do.
of course, this week they promised us that Jerry Lawler would be here next week. So Jerry Lawler has taken over the role of Mil Mascaras on this show.
And the midget tag team match from before you started.
Oh, the midget girl wrestlers.
I don't think it was a girl midget wrestling tag
I
match. I
think
think it was just a regular. I think it was the men. But either way, it was like they taped it after an angle where Jim Duggan and somebody became a heel tag team because they healed on Matt Bourne. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, when they aired the match, Duggan had already turned babyface, but they kept in the commentary about how Duggan was this despicable asshole who just turned on his friend Matt Bourne. It was
yeah.
hilarious.
I was thinking of like I think it's like early '82. There's a that they're hyping a match that's coming and Bill Boyd was just so excited. The little midget girl wrestlers are gonna be back. Oh, by
Yes.
the way, so I wish I had known this last week or a couple of weeks ago when we needed an extra show to watch. The next time that we need a show to watch, I have stumbled across. I guess it came from the network, but there is an episode of like pre Mid South NWA Tri-State, like
Yeah,
with Boyd Pierce and Leroy McGurk from 1978 that we
I
should watch
saw
sometime.
I saw that, yeah. I didn't watch it, but I did see it. I don't think it was on the cock. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was one of those from nowhere specific. Here's a random 1978 Mid-South show or NWA Tri-State show.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we're gonna skip over a few miles west to Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas. Now, I was unaware, and I actually did some research just to double check this. This is apparently the first time they ever did a Thanksgiving show. Not just a Thanksgiving
Really?
Star Wars, but a Thanksgiving show in general.
Huh. Did you
And
get that? Did you get that from Dave's annual big ass wrestling on Thanksgiving story?
no, I forgot to read it that this year. But I actually was from Lance Peterson on Twitter, who's a guy who went to a lot of these shows back in the day, and he's puts up pictures of programs, of shows he went to, and one of them was from this show, and it said like the first Thanksgiving show or something like that. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. And that's when I did some digging because I was like, oh, they meant like the first Star Wars show. It was just not called Star Wars, like Greensboro. It was like they had Thanksgiving shows forever, but it wasn't called Starcade until '83. But no, this, from what I could tell, this was their first ever Thanksgiving show.
And speaking of Starcade, this here Star Wars is maybe the second, at the most, the second most famous show that happened on this day, because this was in fact the day of the original Starcade.
This was the day that uh, Fritz Von Erich was watching Starcade on pay-per-view in his house, and then he walked outside and told Carrie it was time to get into the wrestling business.
God damn it! I had a joke I was going to make about that later, and you ruined it.
I'm sorry. Well, let's go to the intro with Bill Mercer.
Welcome to the Holiday Wrestling Spectacular at Sold Out, vivacious, vibrant Reunion Arena here in downtown Dallas, Texas. A tremendous card of world-class championship wrestling. Kamala and David Von Erich. That's just one of the super main events. Remember this one? Kamala battling David Von Erich. David putting the iron claw, and then Akbar comes up with his whip across the back. Well, it didn't take long for David Von Erich to react to that one, or Kamala. But David Von Erich is the only man who owns a victory over Kamala. He did that with the iron claw. Kamala, the Ugandan giant. David Von Erich, the toast of Texas. And in our other tremendous event, it'll be Chris Adams. Remember the Mask Avenger? He had to come as this to gain a victory over gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. And then we found out the Mask Avenger was the one and only, the man from Stratford-on-Avon, England, Chris Adams, who will have a shot at that American Heavyweight Championship with Sunshine, the former valet of gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, in his corner. And the American Heavyweight Champion, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, will be battling with Precious in his corner. This tremendous world-class championship wrestling. And coming up next, it'll be Terry Gordy and Kevin Von Erich next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
So, notably, no Carey versus Michael Hayes.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and like, I figured, okay, I waited till the end of the show because I figured, okay, they're gonna do or say something to lead into, like, oh, they're gonna air it next week or whatever, and they don't mention it, and so I skipped through next week's show just enough to like glance through it, and the match doesn't air next week either. So
I
it's
mean,
possible.
I know it exists because I watched it.
I mean, they may have aired it on the Fort Worth show, maybe, but yeah. Either way, no Carey and Michael Hayes next week. We'll talk about what happened in that match, or Trey will talk about it at the end of this show because I didn't. I did not go and hunt it down. By the way, did you note this is the first time they called Precious Precious?
Yes, I did.
Before this, she was Sunshine 2 and Sunshine's Valet and all that. I think we mentioned this, but if 1 second, that angle was super rushed, wasn't it? Like, I don't know, it just feels like, you know, it wasn't given any time to really sink in. Like, 1 week, here's Precious, and 2 weeks later, Precious is now helping Jimmy Garvin turn on Sunshine.
Maybe Jimmy and Precious were having trouble at home, and they thought that it would behoove them to get her on the road with him. I don't know.
True that.
I don't know. I don't know anything. I just said that off the top of my head. I have no idea if Jimmy Garvin and Precious were having marital problems in 1983.
This is not going to get reported as fact.
No, please.
Terry Gordy versus Kevin Von Erich. I had to restart this match because this is when I got the nosebleed from blowing my nose too hard while dealing with my cold. And believe me, if this match had John Mantell or Max or Mr. Ebony or the fucking Mongol, I just ignore the fucking match entirely and just tell you the finish and move on with my life. But this was a fucking war. This was a fucking match. I fucking loved this match. And this was actually the first thing I watched. I watched this before the Mid-South show. And I'm like, holy shit, this is a good sign for this week because this is the first fucking match I'm watching. And yeah, just, I don't know what you think, but like, I love this match, obviously.
I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. It they kind of lost me later on, but it wasn't a bad match. It was it was pretty good. Now the cool thing was that the version that I watched of this had the entrances restored, which means I believe chronologically this is the first time that I've ever heard Bad Street USA used, and we got Bad Street USA and of course Stranglehold, so that was a good time. But yeah, it's like the best heel worker in the territory and the best Von Erich, and it was Freebirds Von Erichs in Dallas, so the crowd was super hot for it. It was good.
Now, you didn't rewatch any of this, right?
Not really. I kind of looked through the show to see what was where, but I didn't sit and watch any of it.
So Kevin tries to injure the thumb of Gordy, and tries to shove the thumb into the turnbuckle to try to prevent him from using the Oriental Spike, but Gordy fought it off. And then it became a lot of, we're going to miss moves. Kerry misses a drop kick. Gordy misses the spike when he goes for it. They both miss more moves. They miss some splashes, but Kevin then hits a moonsault off the top rope and gets the pin.
Okay, you call it a moonsault. I'm going to call it a turning crossbody.
I mean, I was thinking about like Bam Bam Bigelow. That was the Bam Bam Bigelow moonsault.
I guess.
After the match, Buddy Roberts runs in and Gordy hit Kevin in the head with Buddy's boot that he somehow lost. And we had a 2-on-1 until Kerry and David make the save. But before they do, Buddy holds Kevin down and allows Gordy to stomp Kevin's right hand, the claw hand.
Dun, dun.
I heard this is a damn good match. I know we don't usually give star ratings, but I'd have given that a 4-star rating. I think it's the best match we've seen on these shows in a while.
I might have to rewatch this match.
I don't know. Maybe I was just in the right mood for it.
I don't know. Like I was into it, and then it just kind of went on, and they just kind of lost the plot, and then it ended up being, it was fine. I didn't dislike it.
Well, let's go to David Von Erich, who is going to preview his random match with Kamala.
Reunion. I had a chance to talk to David Von Erich about his bout with Kamala. Chance to talk to David Von Erich before his match with Kamala. Now, you are the only living human being I know that has had a win over Kamala, and you've used that claw effectively on him. How do you feel about this one?
Bill, this was no different than any other match against Kamala. Kamala is a dangerous man. We all know that. Everybody knows that, from Bruiser Brody on down to the smallest man in the world. You can look at Kamala and you know he's a dangerous man. He's a man that's going to hurt somebody. But Akbar, you tried, and for 2 months you've been talking about how you are going to ban the claw. Well, the night is tonight, and the claw is here. It ain't banned, and it's going on Kamala's head. You can bet your bottom dollar on that.
I would think the last thing he would try to do is get the claw band. That's historical with your father starting, and you've perfected it too.
Well, as we all know, and we've seen through the time, Akbar pulls a whole lot of things out of his sleeve. Akbar's not a man you can trust, and Akbar's not a man I'm going to turn my back on. And if I get a chance to grab a hold of him and put the claw on his head and bust him wide open, then Akbar, you stick your nose close enough inside that ring, because I can leave you laying right next to Kamala, and y'all be stacked just in a little line. It'd look real cute.
The beauty of this match is to take another win over Kamala. That makes it just perfect. Well, David Von Erich, the best to you in this one. Very much success.
That was not the best promo we've ever heard. I gotta tell you, I mean, like, it was pretty awkward even before Mercer's weird ending there.
Yeah, I mean, it's David. It's David
And he,
was. None
and
of them
he,
were really smooth talkers, were they?
no, and he was the one being groomed for the world title. And I guess, it's easy to look back now and say, but I guess at the time he was a big draw outside of the territory.
Yeah, yeah, because he had, he'd worked Florida. He was the one that kind of had a name in St. Louis, which was like, like the two, like number one was obviously Madison Square Garden, but the number two wrestling city in the United States was St. Louis. So
Mhm.
like all the top NWA stars would go to work St. Louis, and that was like you kind of had like if you were being groomed for the NWA title, you worked St. Louis because that was Sam Muchnick's town, and that was the kind of the big town of the NWA.
Indeed. Um, and I don't know. It's like I'm always curious if you think David was gonna get a real run with the belt, if it was just gonna it was always going to be a 1 month Tommy Rich run with the belts, a Dusty Rhodes run with the belt. Hell, I mean, Dusty won it 3 damn times and he held it like a month total. But
Yeah,
I don't picture David being the traveling touring world champion.
yeah, I don't see that he would have kept it for very long. He might have got it a little longer than Kerry did, just because they didn't trust Kerry for obvious reasons.
Obviously.
I don't
So,
think that
mm,
I don't think that David has had Okay, I guess we should talk about this in like 2 months, but what do you make of the like was it the health issue like the family said on the dark side of the ring, or was it an overdose and Baba and Brody and whoever covered it up?
I I honestly don't know. I I mean, apparently the death certificate claimed it was the health issue, and I don't know like how easy it is to convince doctors or convince someone doing an autopsy to lie on a death certificate like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
look, and Fumi Saito kind of like dismissed the whole idea of like, well, Baba didn't have that kind of power. I'm like, Baba was really famous and really highly regarded. Like,
Baba got the
I
when,
think that Baba could have had that happen if he'd wanted to, and I could see
when,
because Baba and Fritz were friends going way back. He
uh-huh.
wouldn't want to embarrass the family, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know, but it like didn't Brody himself say that he flushed shit down the toilet?
I mean, I believe it. That doesn't necessarily mean he OD'd. I mean, whatchamacallit, Jericho flushed shit of Art Bars down the toilet when Art Bar died, but I think Art Bars was an overdose. Um,
That's true. That's true.
but here's a question, and this might be our first off-topic tangent of the show. So, thinking about David, obviously dying before getting the belt, and who knows what his title reign would have been. When Magnum TA had his accident and they turned Nikita babyface for Starrcade 86, should they have put the belt on Nikita, if even just for a brief, run just to lose it back to Flair in January or something?
Yeah, I think so. It could have just been a month or two, but they probably, what difference does it make? I mean, what negative difference does it make? It would have helped put the whole thing over. It would have made Nikita a bigger star. It wasn't going to hurt Flair. It, I don't know.
I think, and I was thinking about this a little while ago. I think the only reason why that was not seriously considered was because they had just done the Flair Dusty switch during the summer during the Great American Bash, and they may have thought it was too soon to do the same thing again.
Yeah, that may be it. You're probably right.
Because remember, Starrcade was not supposed to be Flair versus Magnum, because they had already announced Nikita versus Magnum as a culmination of their U.S. title feud. It was going to be Flair versus Garvin. And then, of course, Garvin ended up being sidestepped into wrestling with Big Bubba instead. But, I mean, it's one of those misnomers that Flair was going to wrestle Magnum at Starrcade when that wasn't the case at all.
Now, Magnum, I think Magnum would ended up being the Sting push.
Yes, but he would have gotten it sooner than that.
Yes, and which okay, in retrospect, I think they were originally going to do the Sting thing at a better time. Like he was supposed to get it in February '90,
Uh-huh.
and he blew out his knee. He blew out his knee climbing up the cage at the Clash of Champions,
When Doug
and then
Dillinger yanked him off the
yeah,
side of the cage.
yeah, they ended up having to put it off until like the Great American Bash.
Yep.
But if I, Magnum was Dusty's guy,
Hmm.
I would like to think that Dusty would have known the right moment to pull the trigger on Magnum.
You would think so, but I mean, I still think Wyndham should have gotten the Ron Garvin title reign,
Yes.
but he didn't because it was only done just for Flair to win it back, and Dusty didn't want his protege to have a bullshit world title reign. I want him to have a real title win and title reign. And then at the end of the day, Barry Windham never actually got that because I mean, I don't care what you tell me, the fucking NWA title in 1993 is not a world title. Um, but yeah, it's like Wyndham should have gotten that title reign. Like at the end of the day, like Wyndham Flair would have been a fucking fantastic Starrcade main event, and Ronnie Garvin versus Dr. Death would have been so much better than Wyndham versus Dr. Death was.
Probably, yeah.
But now that I'm the reason why we got taken off the rails, let's go back on the rails. David Von Erich versus Kamala with General Skandor Akbar and Friday. So I know he was living the gimmick by doing this, but I always felt bad for Kamala not wearing knee pads while he wrestled. Although I am curious, how does a savage who apparently doesn't know what knee pads are know enough to wear clothes? Or how did this kayfabe relationship with he and Friday even begin? Like, I assume Friday was meandering around deepest, darkest Africa and saw this man and somehow convinced him to come to America and become a professional wrestler. Obviously, I am overthinking things.
Now that would have been a funny angle, right? Kamala's in a match and he like lands and hurts his knee, and he's kind of looking around and seeing people with knee pads, so he like gets a hold of I don't know, a fucking shirt or a piece of cloth or something and rips it up and wraps it around his knee. And that's like the genesis of Kamala having knee pads. That would have been that would have been funny.
That seems like something they could have done when Slick was his manager.
Yeah. Man, so I've said it before. Like you kind of just have this picture of Kamala not being very good because you're thinking about like the 90s WWF run. This Kamala was fucking great at being Kamala.
Yes.
I have really, really come to appreciate Kamala since we've been doing these shows.
Oh yeah,
This was honestly, this was the best match I've seen David have.
and I'm with you there too because I mean, until he showed up at he showed up in Mid South first. So until he showed up in Mid South, it's like the most I'd ever seen of Kamala was just his gimmick runs of the '90s. Versus Undertaker, and then in the Dungeon of Doom, all that shit. And obviously, he was not the greatest wrestler of all time, but it's like, yeah, he could go, and he's another one of those people that like there's so much better in ring than they get credit for, because all you ever think about is the WWF cartoon run.
Yeah. And he, like, Kamala did not need to be doing arm drags and hip tosses and fucking chain wrestling. He needed to be a fucking headhunter from deepest darkest Africa, and he was perfect at that. He was exactly what Kamala should have been.
Speaking of him chain wrestling, he did have two world title matches in his career. The famous Bryan Danielson match, and he also took on Harley Race for the NWA World Title.
Did he when he was feuding with Hogan, was Hogan not the champion?
I did not even think about Hogan. He probably feuded with Hogan for the world title. I was just thinking about like not like world titles where you're expected to work.
Okay.
Because you were talking about chain wrestling and all that.
I need to watch that Danielson match. It's been a long time.
It's a fun match. I watched it for our for the segment that lasted like 2 weeks. This match definitely happened. It was that and the James Storm Rhino Elevation X match.
You'd come up with some pretty like wacky shit to do that. Like Tommy Dreamer had a singles match with Akira Taue once. Isn't that fucking weird?
I cannot even picture that.
I'm gonna guess it was not as good as the match Taue had with Big Bubba.
I would be shocked if it were. Be shocked if it were. By the way, since we're not talking about this match, David got the claw on and Friday put Kamala's foot on the ropes. So David goes after Friday and Akbar, who jumped on the apron. He puts the claw on Akbar, which somehow leads to Kamala being disqualified. Don't bother asking how Kamala got disqualified for David putting the claw on Akbar. Anyway, Kerry runs in for the save and gave Kamala a huge body slam, which, because it's 1983, that's a big fucking deal.
I have a problem.
What is that?
Kamala did a chop on David, and David took a bump over the top rope. That should have been a DQ. Do not try to rationalize it to me. I will not listen.
Kamala did not.
Do not try to rationalize it to me. I will not listen.
But it's a referee's discretion, and he did the chop, and it's not like you can argue that he was not intending that upon doing this chop, David would fly over the top rope to the floor.
Kamala intends ever.
But Kamala gives a lot of people chops, and no one has ever flown over the top rope from them.
Well, maybe he intended to do it every time, and this was the one time it worked.
Well, who knows? Anyway, so this feud must continue, apparently. Even though the feud started with David pinning Kamala. So I guess now he needs more revenge.
I guess so. Oh, by the way, Kerry slammed Kamala, so apparently Akbar now owes Kerry $10,000.
Yes. I'd forgotten that was a thing until they brought it up.
Yeah. Apparently.
So before our main event, let's hear from champion and challenger Jimmy Garvin and Chris Adams.
1,000 delirious fans here in Reunion Arena for Wrestling Holidays Spectacular. And one of those spectacular events features the Englishman, that gentleman Chris Adams, and the American Heavyweight Champion, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. I had a chance to talk to Chris Adams and Garvin about their bout for the American Championship. Chris Adams going for the American Heavyweight Championship. You've got Sunshine in your corner, and I'm sure you feel very confident.
The reason I feel confident, Bill, is because Sunshine is in my corner in order that Precious does not interfere in my match. And that's the main thing, because I know I can beat Garvin because I've beaten him before. This is the big, big night for me, and I think I can pull it off, Bill.
I feel your confidence. I know we're looking forward to this bout, and we're going to turn our attention now to what Jimmy Garvin had to say about all this.
Okay, Bill.
Well, here we are again, Bill Mercer, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, along with thousands and thousands of wrestling fans, because everywhere gorgeous Jimmy Garvin goes, the American Heavyweight Champion, it seems that thousands and thousands of wrestling fans gather around. The reason being that I am the American Heavyweight Champion, that I'm going to remain the American Heavyweight Champion, no matter what Chris Adams seems to think, no matter what he seems to think about that poor excuse for a woman being in his corner. Big deal. She don't have a license. She don't belong there anyway, and all these insane wrestling fans around here, and it's just about ready to come to an end.
She better stay away from me, too. She better. I hate her guts.
You know, she's been pushing her weight around here. You know, Precious just sits in the corner. She minds her own business. But tonight, we're going to take care of that phony Englishman and that poor excuse for a woman.
Thank you, Jimmy Garvin.
Okay, I know I brought this up before, but I don't know what Jimmy Garvin is on, but every time I look into his eyes, I'm just like, oh my God, he's on some good shit.
It was the 80s. He was coked out of his skull. I don't doubt it.
That's
look at me. It's the second grievous rumor that I've started about poor Jimmy Garvin on this show.
When we get a cease and desist letter from Jimmy Garvin, you have to read it on the air.
Oh, Jimmy, I'm sure you're a wonderful pilot. Don't sue me.
Oh my God. Did you ever watch Super Brawl 4?
Would that be 94?
94. Yeah.
Let
me tell you what happens. You made me think about this by calling him a pilot. So, Michael Hayes was supposed to wrestle Johnny B. Bad, but the start of the show is Jimmy Garvin pushing Hayes out in a wheelchair, and I don't remember the specifics as to why Hayes was in a wheelchair, but Hayes is like, well, we're not going to have a match tonight because I'm injured, and Jimmy is retired. He's now a pilot, and yada, 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 yada. And Nick Bockwinkel, the commissioner, comes out and announces that Jimmy Garvin has to wrestle Johnny B. Bad, and if he doesn't, he's suspended from WCW for life. And, of course, everyone flips out, and, they eventually wrestle. So it's like, wait, so Jimmy Garvin, the person who's retired to become a pilot, if he doesn't wrestle, he's suspended from wrestling for life.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it really doesn't. By the way, Mercer mentions there's 20,000 Delirious fans in the crowd. I didn't even realize Delirious had 20,000 fans, especially 20 years before he even started wrestling.
What can I say, man? That's the power of the whatever the fuck Delirious spoke.
By the way, before that random Super Brawl 4 match, the last time Jimmy Garvin had even wrestled was September 9th, 1992. He teamed with the Z-Man to lose to Butch Reed and the Barbarian.
Bob Marion?
Yes.
So during this match, Bill Mercer announced that Ric Flair had defeated Harley Race for the world title. And I'm assuming that Fritz, who was watching at home on pay-per-view, told him. But anyway, it was said that it's going to be Flair and David at the Christmas Star Wars.
Yes. I'm sorry I killed your joke there.
Okay.
And this is actually what led to me finding out that this was the first Thanksgiving show because I wanted to find out what time did this show start? Because I'm like, it's possible that technically Flair beat Harley before this match went to the ring.
Entirely
But
possible, because that also North Carolina is an hour ahead of Texas.
yeah. But I mean, this wasn't the main event, so that's the only reason I'm not sure. But anyway, so Jimmy Garvin had a new white fur coat, and Sunshine had a white fur coat. Do you think they got them at the same time before they broke up?
Probably.
And Chris Adams had this weird ass combo UK US robe. I don't think he ever wears that again.
Shame, it was cool.
Um, Mercer brings up how this feud got started, how Garvin won the American title, how every week he defend the title against, as Mercer put it, not top contenders. Until one week he went to a time limit draw with Chris Adams, and suddenly Garvin no longer wanted to defend the belt every week. Um, I thought this was another really good match. Rushed, but still really good. Um, the finish pretty much came out of nowhere and it was all about the girls. The finish was Garvin runs off the ropes, but Sunshine, who's on the apron, rips Garvin down by the hair, and Adams dives on top for the pin to win the belt. And the biased David Manning was watching the entire time. Where is Wally Carbo to come out and reverse the decision? Wait, wrong promotion.
Not reversing this decision is the worst thing Grizzly Smith ever did.
Uh, and so Chris Adams is your new American champion. I think the match was fine, but it was at best second best on the show, and to be honest, it's probably third best.
They had a better match on TV a couple of weeks ago, or maybe I don't know, a month or two ago. But this was good, and it had the added dimension of the Sunshine and Precious story. The finish was wonky, like you said, but you know. And then Sunshine went after Precious, and Precious bailed, and Sunshine slapped David Manning, which I support on principle.
Yes, that made her the number one babyface.
Absolutely.
So before we finish things up, you want to tell us about Hayes and Carey?
Sure. So the match was joined in progress. I don't know why. Whenever they aired this, they didn't air the full match of the main event. But Fritz was there watching. Hayes choked Carey with a bandage, and Carey fought back, and Hayes got colored. They went back and forth. It was pretty good. The crowd was hot for it, of course. Gordy came out, and then some Texas Ranger looking motherfucker like gets in between Gordy and Fritz, but then Fritz ends up slamming Gordy anyway, because he's Fritz, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Now the hell of it is how, because what Fritz's ranch was down around Tyler, right? How did he finish watching the Starrcade pay-per-view and get to Reunion Arena that fast? That had to have been some kind of
That is a
some
very
kind
good
of
question,
witchcraft.
especially since it was daylight when he watched the end of Starrcade on pay-per-view.
So Buddy Roberts threw Hayes a gimmick. Carey caught it and hit Hayes with it and got the pin. And then Roberts climbed into the cage, lost his balance, hurt his balls on the top rope. A bunch of shit happened. Somewhere in here, Fritz slammed the door on Gordy's head. So poetic justice for Gordy slamming the door on Carey's head last Christmas. The finish was a big clusterfuck, but it was fun. And
It sounded like a fun
but
clusterfuck, at least.
much to my surprise, Kevin Von Erich did not lose the Loser Leaves Texas match.
For 1 year. Um,
How long
I
is
bet-
Hayes gone? Like
I'm pretty
a
sure he's
month?
back. I'm pretty sure he's back in February.
Jesus.
Um, but uh, but yeah, so It sounds fun, and I bet Buddy Roberts selling his balls was tremendous.
Yes.
It was everything I ever dreamed it could be.
How often do you dream of Buddy Roberts' balls?
Twice a week.
Oh,
Yeah. But yeah, so that's gonna do it for World Class. And somehow, despite a show where we stayed on topic almost the entire time, and one of us had isn't able to talk very well, we still went about 90 minutes.
we are iron men and women, iron persons.
So are we the Road Warriors or are we Vince Russo?
Now look, you really gonna insult me like that this close to Christmas?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called you the Road Warriors.
Can I at least be Hawk?
Tell him, Hawk.
Well, over on the Oh My God cast, we haven't had Hawk around for the last few weeks, so I haven't had the chance to get any of his witticisms. But luckily, you know who's been there instead? Stan fucking Hansen. Greatest
That's seems like a much better
greatest
trade-off.
substitute there could be. It is a fantastic trade-off. Yeah, by the way, listen to the Oh My God cast. We put up 2 new shows last week after not putting up anything for a month. We had a new regular show. We also finally put up our bonus show for fucking thunder. What was it
EWA.
called? Autumn Armageddon. And
That's good.
then and so uh so we are going to record a new show tomorrow for a week from Tuesday because it's just so we're trying to do every other week and we usually record on Sunday, but the 15th is my wife's birthday, so that's a non-starter. So yeah,
Happy
hopefully
birthday.
happy birthday. We're gonna go to Hibachi, so that should be fun.
Nice. Um, but 1 second. Don't ask
So
about me,
Mario is coughing up a lung.
I was. Don't ask me what made me think about this, but um, did you ever watch the Kayfabe Commentaries Timeline shoot interview series?
Some of them. I actually just watched the Todd Gordon one on ECW 92-93 like yesterday.
Nice. Did you ever watch the 1989 WWF with Brutus Beefcake?
I don't think so.
Okay, at one point, the host asks Brutus about the rumors about Randy Savage locking Liz in, a closet or whatever during his matches. And Beefcake gets all wide-eyed and he's like, Liz is dead.
Oh,
I assume Brutus thought that he meant, you know, a Savage locking her in a closet now.
Savage was also dead by the time they did those, I'm pretty sure.
I'm maybe because it was,
Dark Side of the
it was
Ring, the Dark Side of the Ring, they were like, yeah, they made fun of Brutus saying he carried Hogan's bag, and then it cut to Brutus talking about how he carried Hogan's bags.
I mean, everyone had a Brutus, you know.
Not everyone gets their Brutus a Starcade main event, so.
True, Piper's Brutus. He tried to get him an uncensored main event, and he got kicked right off the show.
Who was Piper's Brutus?
Remember when WCW had that 3-team match, and Piper went out on
Yes.
Nitro, and
Yeah.
he fought like all these random people? Well, the kickboxer guy was his Brutus.
Or on the famous DVDR sleaze list, one of the items was about Piper having like a gopher who followed him around and carried his bags and stuff. Who I think was actually like, didn't he just randomly come out with Piper when Piper did the promo in TNA?
It may have been him, but also one of Piper's gophers was Johnny Fairplay.
Okay, so I wonder who the one was that apparently Piper wouldn't call him by his name. He just called him cocksucker.
I have no idea.
But there's no empirical evidence for this. This is just from the infamous DVDVR sleaze thread that was started by Tony Khan many years ago. That's like the
Really?
most hilarious thing. If you would have told me 15 years ago that the guy who started the DVDVR sleaze thread was gonna save North American wrestling.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it here for this week's episode of something else, whatever the hell this show is called. Um, but thank you all for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll talk to you again when I hopefully feel better in 7 days.
Bye.